I'm gonna start streaming now. Yes. Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, Nils. Hi.
Hi, fantastic.
Great to talk to you again, man.
Good to
It's
talk
been
to
quite a
you.
while.
It has. See, I'm live streaming on YouTube now as well. So I have to be on speaker just to capture the sound from the Discord.
Yes.
But we should be all set up now.
All right. Let me start the event in our server so people get a notification. And then let's give them maybe 5 minutes to fill up the VC chat. And then let me pin the stream. And do users have to mute the YouTube stream?
It would. They should mute here. I mean, if they're talking here, they don't need to be listening to the YouTube stream. But if they want to see me talk, it's better to just be in the YouTube stream. There will be a few seconds of delay.
Okay.
But if you want to see me talk, it's better to just be on the YouTube. If you don't care about seeing me, it's better to be here in the Discord because there's no delay.
All right. Yes. Okay, let me just ping them all. Maybe I just put it in the announcements chat.
We could also just make people potentially hop on over to the YouTube channel and we make that the main medium. But then it's hard for me to actually hear your questions. Yeah, no, okay. Yeah, let's keep it like this.
All right. All right. I'm good to go. The community is also slowly joining in.
Great.
So, for starting out, I would probably just hand it off to you and let you introduce Auki and give us the newest updates on what you have achieved in the past couple of weeks and months.
Absolutely. So, hello everyone. Happy to be here again. I know that some of you have already given me more than an hour of your time previously to listen to what we're up to. I'm Nils. I'm the CEO of Auki Labs and Matterless Studios. And I'm here today to talk about Auki Labs and the work we've been doing there. So Auki Labs is fundamentally trying to solve the issue of shared AR. What does that mean? Well, it turns out that if you do AR today, the way that AR works, like fundamentally the way it works is the device does something called SLAM, or simultaneous location and mapping. And what that means is when you take the phone and you turn it on and you turn on the camera and the SLAM kicks in, the phone tries to keep track of its own self-relative movement across time. So it's actually not thinking where am I in the world? It's thinking, where am I in relation to where I started this session? And that means that you can't meaningfully share that coordinate with anyone. Because if I say like, hey, I'm 20 centimeters behind where I started, that information is useless to you unless you know where I started. So now you might think, well, okay, couldn't we just share the starting location as a GPS coordinate, for example? But it turns out that a device like this one barely knows which building it's in. Like right now, I'm on the 33rd floor of a building that it has no idea I'm on the 33rd floor. It has no idea I'm really in this building. It can barely place me in the building. So if we were trying to use GPS to place an asset together so that both you and I can see it at the same time, you quickly run into, well, it's not possible. And around 14 months ago, or maybe just 13, we invented the world's first instant AR calibration technique for multiplayer. Meaning we figured out a way to get two devices to instantly get calibrated into the same SLAM coordinate system. So we managed to actually communicate where is the starting location in the self-relative coordinate system. So not relying on GPS. And this turns out to be important for a couple of reasons. One, it turns out that the GPS is never, under any circumstance, going to be able to serve as the foundation for shared AR experiences. So because of this, a couple of small companies like Apple, Google, Microsoft, Meta, Snap, Niantic, the list goes on, are trying to build what's called a digital twin. And what a digital twin is essentially a visual positioning system where they are trying to create one big 3D copy of the world that you can then cross-reference visually, so that when the camera opens up and looks at the world, it'll cross-reference this global memory of what the world looks like to be able to position yourself. And just about a week ago, actually, Google released the very latest in that tech, something they call the geospatial API, which has taken billions of street view pictures and run some very clever algorithms on that to turn all of these photos into a 3D copy of the world, spanning the 87 or so countries where they have street view. And using this tremendous amount of data, they've now been able to create this API that allows a device to look out at the world and position itself with roughly 50 centimeters of precision, which is actually a lot better than GPS, but still not good enough for shared AR. So what is shared AR? Well, shared AR, imagine I wanted to have a matterless pet, for example, on my floor. I want you to see it at exactly the same place on my floor. So if I lean in and pet the companion, you will see me petting the companion too. You won't see me waving my hand 50 centimeters to the left, because that would obviously break the immersion. So what Auki Labs is trying to do is to compete with Apple, Google, etc. In building a new positioning paradigm to replace the GPS. What we are doing differently is that we're doing peer-to-peer positioning instead of peer-to-environment positioning. And to the extent where we allow the peer-to-environment positioning, we do that with self-owned digital twins. Because we don't believe that it would be very good for the world if you were asked by companies like Facebook and Google to give them a 3D copy of what your bedroom looks like, for example. We don't think they need that information. You need the information of what it looks like to be able to have persistent AR in your home, but there's no reason you need to give that data to us or to Facebook or to Google. So what Auki is building is a peer-to-peer positioning protocol, while also building out the functionality to do peer-to-environment positioning with self-owned data. That is my very, very long elevator pitch of what we're up to. And the reason you should care about this is I believe that fundamentally AR technology is inevitable. I think the development of AR is as certain as like the development of internet pornography. Like it's just always going to happen. And the reason it's going to happen is because fundamentally, you could say that augmented reality is actually the oldest technology we have. Bear with me. So language is, arguably one of our very, very oldest inventions. And as I like to point out, if we were walking through a forest together and we found a fallen tree, and I said, hey, look at that beautiful couch. By me calling that fallen tree a couch, I have most likely now impacted your perception so that you see the sittingness of this tree. So language itself actually does what augmented reality does. And I believe that we have a deep-rooted human need to annotate things in the world, to add depth and meaning to things in the world. And humanity is always going to invent augmented reality technology. But what's scary about how it's developing now is that AR is completely reliant on cameras, like completely reliant on cameras. It doesn't work without cameras today. And that means that companies like Apple and Google, etc., they are expecting you in the future to have a camera on your face at all times to be in the AR metaverse. And what Google is demonstrating with their geospatial API is that they are expecting you to always be sharing information with their cloud about what you are looking at. And rumors have it now that Apple's upcoming AR glasses will even be doing like eye tracking. So they will know what you are looking at. And to me, this is a bit of a dystopian nightmare, but it's also the default direction that humanity will take. Like we will go down that path unless we do the harder thing, which is to build self-sovereign data ownership of our own digital twins and building an interoperable protocol for allowing you to have a digital twin of your apartment that my applications can ask permission to enter. Without that kind of protocol, we are basically inviting Apple, Google, Facebook, all of these companies to literally see what we are seeing at all times. And this is already happening. Like this is already happening. At the AWE conference last year, John Hanke, the CEO of our competitor Niantic, the makers of Pokemon Go, said that they have already mapped out thousands of locations using the players of Ingress and Pokemon Go. So they are already collecting visual data from the cameras of their players to build up this digital twin. This is already happening. And if you care about how the metaverse will develop, and if you believe that AR might win out over VR, you should very much care about humanity going down a path that is not reliant on Apple, Google knowing exactly what you're looking at all times.
Could you dive into how Auki is better in terms of privacy?
Right. So for privacy, we are doing two things. One which is quite clear that it will work, and one that is a lot more speculative. The thing that is quite clear that it will work is that we are building out this protocol for letting you own your own digital twin. So let's imagine, for example, that you had a warehouse and I have a warehouse, and let's say Tracy has a drone delivery company. And Tracy's drone is supposed to pick up a package from your warehouse at a very specific location, right? And drop that package off at my warehouse at a very specific location. Then with the visual positioning systems that Apple, Google, etc. are proposing, they would know what the inside of your warehouse looks like. Like they would have to know. But what we're proposing is you should be able to have a digital twin of your warehouse that you are self-hosting, right? You host it. So when Tracy's drone shows up at your warehouse, you guys do a handshake. Tracy Strone says, I'm here to pick up the package. I have a staked reputation that is big enough for you to trust me to access your data here. And I'm going to ask you to either do some computation on my behalf. So please calculate a path for me to get to the package. And I promise on my staked reputation that I will not deviate from this path. I will only follow this path and go straight to the package and pick it up. Or if you don't want to do this computation for me, you can instead share the map with me, and I will stake my reputation on not copying this map and leaving with a copy of the map. So Tracy Strone picks up the package and then flies over to my warehouse where the same kind of handshake takes place. So Tracy Strone was never in possession of both your map and my map at the same time. And Auki Labs was never in possession of either. So
can you elaborate what you mean with the reputation?
So what we mean by that, this is one of the use cases of the actual token, that we think one of the ways that we make a system like this work is to have a staked reputation. So if you want to have access to someone else's domain, this is what we call the self-owned digital twin is a domain. You as a domain owner will be able to set up the rules for which kind of applications you will give access to this data, what kind of actors you want to give access to this data, and how much they need to stake for you to feel safe to let them in, for you to feel safe that they will not betray the rules of your domain. So if, for example, you are happy to let Tracy Strone into your warehouse, provided Tracy Strone only follows the path that you have given, then what the token will do here is if it is the case that Tracy Strone deviates off the path that you gave her, so now she's out exploring the warehouse in a way that she's not supposed to be, then she automatically gets slashed for that. So hopefully that creates a financial incentive against abusing access to someone's real estate.
If I might chime in, forgive me.
Absolutely.
So, of course, this is something that Amazon, of course, is wanting to try and develop as well. One of my main fears around the whole Amazon drone collection and delivery service is something, as you mentioned, in regards to, let's say, me giving my estate a whole, 3D coordinate, 1 by 1 by 1 centimeter coordinate map to Amazon or another individual coming in, and let's say they stake X amount. If they were a non-state actor or someone wanting to inflict harm, of course, the whole slashing mechanism kind of goes out the window. And I'm just worried or wondering if there's a way to either deactivate it remotely or stop it being able to see its surroundings or know its surroundings the moment it kind of deviates from the course. Because if you're wanting to inflict harm and you've staked this amount, this is probably the cheapest and probably most efficient way of, let's say, taking a hit on someone.
So there are a couple of considerations there. One, of course, if you think your data is very, very sensitive, then you should demand quite a lot of financial disincentive before you let someone in. And of course, you can revoke access to your domain and potentially make it very difficult for the drone to be trespassing. But ultimately, if we end up with a situation of physical trespassing, where the drone is now like physically in your real estate and capturing data that is not supposed to be, that is ultimately a problem that I think is outside of what a positioning protocol can guarantee that it can stop, right? So what we can do is we can, of course, insist that the drone gives us slave access to a lot of its locomotion, so that if the drone deviates from the path, then we can try to say that, well, the drone doesn't get to move anymore. But of course, if we're dealing with someone that has this kind of malicious intent, that they want to go in and map your real estate without your permission anyhow, then I don't know that we could guarantee, or that anyone could really guarantee, a way to stop that from happening. So if your data is very sensitive, you need to start with security policies for yourself to not let in the kind of actors that you think might be out to harm you.
No, interesting. No, thank you. And I was also wondering, because you mentioned as well with either them following your predefined path or them using your map, a nicer route, for instance, is there a way we could, in my warehouse say, you know what, the only way you're coming in is my route? You could pledge or you could stake, $1 gazillion. I'll still say no to that.
Absolutely. You'll be able to say that the only way to get into my warehouse is if you follow this route, and if you don't follow the route, then you will get slashed, and the developer of the application, like the software that manages the drone, can lose access to the protocol fully if they're not complying with the rules. So, whatever software, let's say that, Tracy's delivery drone is running a future version of Uber or whatever, then Uber in that case would lose access to the protocol.
Understood. No, it makes sense. Thank you.
Can I ask a really quick question?
Please.
Yes, sir.
So the way that you describe it makes it sound like it's targeting people or entities who have basically a lot at stake, maybe like financially or materially. Do you see Auki being adopted by just, I guess, the everyday layman that, they care about privacy, but, just like we quote unquote cared about privacy before the cell phones that we all have in our hands and all carry around every day now, like we did back then. So, is this more of like a B2B protocol that will be employed by actors with a lot to lose, or do you see this as everyday people also using Auki?
So it's a little bit of both. The main audience is obviously the kind of people that make software. But let's say, for example, that you had, 2 years from now, you have an AR NFT collection that you want to be able to hang on your walls, right? Then for the AR NFTs to be hanging on your walls, then whatever software is rendering those NFTs need to know where your walls are. Otherwise, it can't hang on your walls. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
So the idea here is that if you want to be able to have that kind of persistent AR experience in your home, then you should create your own digital twin of your home rather than letting Facebook, Apple, Google have the digital twin of your home. Because there is no such thing as persistent AR that is not camera based. Meaning in any scenario where you imagine today that you will have AR persistently in your home, without Auki, that will be because you've sent the data of what your home looks like to one of these big players.
So Auki really spans the gamut of target audiences, is what you're saying.
If you are looking to have persistent AR experiences, then there will be a consumer component here where we let you have your own domain at home. So the idea is then, as a consumer, let's say that you have 10 different AR applications, and let's say that 8 of those AR applications have access to the Auki protocol. Then those 8 applications, you could choose which ones of them will have access to your domain. So if you really trust this particular AR NFT collection, then you give them access to the data so that they can hang the NFTs on your wall. But if there's some other protocols where you're less sure that they will respect your privacy, then you don't give them access.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Kind of along those lines, and talking about consumer adoption, do you think that the complexity or potential complexity of Auki is going to be a limiting factor, or how do you overcome that? Because especially when you bring in crypto into it, crypto kind of has a bad rap. So are there barriers that you see that need to be overcome for this to be adopted on a consumer level, or is the crypto aspect just totally on the back end?
there is definitely a lot of hurdles. Like, I don't think this is an easy project to build. I think it's an important project to build because the alternative is, you know, a very deep surveillance capitalism. And it may be the case that people just don't care and they're very happy to let Facebook know what their bedroom looks like, and you'll wear your AR glass. Like, do you guys remember when Google Glass came out? People actually got punched in the face because other people were not comfortable with them walking around with a camera on their face. You know, ask yourself, how likely is your girlfriend or wife going to be okay with you wearing AR glasses at home if there's a camera on them, right? And this brings us to the second thing that Auki is doing to try to preserve privacy. And this is the more out there thing that we're trying to do. We're actually prototyping a pair of AR glasses that don't have a camera on them at all, right? So how do they navigate? So first of all, I'm going to be clear here. We're not trying to be an AR glasses company. We're building this prototype just to show other AR glasses manufacturers that this is a path that we can go down instead of camera-based AR. And we're doing this with ultra-wideband triangulation. So if you wanted to have a pair of AR glasses at home that don't have a camera so that you can feel safe, you know, walking around naked in your home without fearing that you walk past a mirror and you have a camera on your face, you could use these glasses in a privacy-preserving way. Now, you know, we know on a whiteboard that this will work, but we haven't finished building out the ultra-wideband triangulation prototype to definitively prove that this is a path that we can go down. Skodo, I just happened to see your question here. How do we create a digital twin if we don't use cameras? Well, to create the digital twin, you definitely need a camera, right? So to build up the idea of where the walls are, you would use a camera for that. So what we envision here is essentially you put up some ultra-wideband beacons in your home that allow the glasses to know where they are in relation to the ultra-wideband beacons, and then you use your phone to create a digital twin that is anchored to the ultra-wideband beacons. So you scan your home once, so now you know your domain knows where the walls are, but the glasses don't need a camera to navigate inside the domain.
Nils, is this where the lighthouses come into play as well?
Yes, this is where the lighthouses come into play as well. So lighthouses are a way for us to anchor these digital twins to each other and to the world.
And maybe can you elaborate on maybe more specifically on the utility of those lighthouses and how they are tied into the blockchain by being NFTs?
Sure. So a lighthouse in its most simple implementation is essentially just a QR code. But what that QR code does is it allows an Auki-enabled device to figure out exactly where it is in relation to that QR code. And that QR code can also know its exact relation to another QR code. So we could imagine, for example, if you wanted to have a completely... Actually, let me put it this way. Let's say that you put one of these QR codes under each light switch in your home and one next to the door, etc. Then no matter which QR code you scanned, you would know exactly where you are in the home without having to record what the whole home looks like, right? But that's not the main use case of it. The main use case of it is it's very difficult to build up a digital twin over time and with multiple devices. Because let's say that we were going to do a 3D scan of an entire apartment. Then if we're doing that with one phone, we're going to get a lot of drift. If we're doing it in more than one session, we're going to have a hard time piecing these together. Because remember, at the start, the device barely knows what it is, right? So if I was scanning this side of this apartment, and then in another session, I scan the other side of this apartment. Again, my phone doesn't even know that we're on the same floor or not. So what the lighthouses do is they allow these 3D scans to be anchored to each other with millimeter precision so we can stitch them together. So we see lighthouses as the kind of skeleton or scaffolding for building up complex digital twins in the future. And the way we see digital twins is rather than Auki Labs trying to build up one digital twin to compete with Apple, Google, etc. We should let everyone build their own digital twin, and instead we should build a protocol for interoperating between them. So we are not trying to beat Apple or Google to having the best map of the world. Our approach is you can make the best map of your home or the best map of your warehouse, and you should be able to own that yourself. And we need to make a protocol that allow other people to make use of those maps.
And needs to rephrase one of the questions here, and also to see if I understood it correctly. You would own your own data of everything that has been mapped in any area that falls under your privacy. Is that correct?
So you could make a map of the whole world if you wanted to, right? Like, we don't know what real estate belongs to you, right? But we know it's very unlikely that someone else will get into your home and make a map, right? Like, that's a fairly safe assumption. If anyone makes a map of your bedroom, it's probably you. Is that fair, right? So you could, in theory, try to make a really big domain for yourself, like a domain that covers all of San Francisco, for example, and then make money off of that domain by lending that domain to other app developers that benefit from that good map existing.
So what we will potentially see eventually is like a race to map the world.
Yes, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create so that the world gets mapped with thousands of micro digital twins rather than one big digital twin, and allow this interoperability so that, you know, if you've created a digital twin of a warehouse or a mall or whatever, then that mall can give access to applications like Matterless for a fee. So if Matterless, for example, wants to already know where all the walls are when their users are in this mall, then they would pay that mall for access to that map.
I mean, that's just genius, because now you're turning everything around and you pretty much let the community build what you couldn't do yourself, right? And then you also have the flip side where they are greatly incentivized financially and potentially through for protecting their own privacy to do this. So maybe, since we are touching on this indirectly now, could you elaborate on the token model and how that's going to be working out in the future, and how you avoid potentially inflation of the token itself and, you know, it losing its value if there's maybe too many people mapping things?
So one thing that we touched on already is this concept of lighthouses. And one of the things that we want to do with the lighthouses is allow you to own the lighthouses as non-fungible tokens, which, you know, crazy. It's not a JPEG. How does that work? But essentially, since each QR code just has a unique reference ID, it's very easy for us to put that reference ID directly into the non-fungible token. And if anyone then uses that lighthouse for calibration, then you would be able to earn a calibration fee for owning that lighthouse. So let's say, for example, that you had been able to map out a local park with lighthouses, and you own these lighthouses. And now when people come with an Auki enabled app like the Matterless Companions and they want to play in this park, if they use those QR codes, then the app developer would be paying, you know, they're already paying us, and we would be sharing that revenue with the people that have provided the calibration. So if you are the one that has mapped out a park, then you would be making some of the money that Matterless is spending on Auki to get the positioning. So,
excuse me, is there like a limited amount of lighthouses, or do you know how many lighthouses you need to map the world? And how do you, like, who gets the lighthouse for, you know, Times Square, for example? Because that obviously is a spot where the lighthouse is going to generate a lot of revenue.
So we don't know what the absolute limit of lighthouses should be. We're not trying to create like any kind of artificial scarcity with these NFTs. The reason we're making them NFTs is not for them to be rare collectibles, but for there to be a marketplace for exchanging ownership of these calibration things. So to create an economy of mappers, right? So I'm not here to tell you that you should buy Lighthouse NFTs because they're collectibles. No, you should buy Lighthouse NFTs if you're interested in contributing to building a digital twin, and if you want to look at monetizing that digital twin. So it's essentially a way to create virtual real estate that might actually be productive in the sense that since we are building a protocol for applications like, you know, what Animoca is building on our platform and what Magilus is building on our platform, if these applications want to make use of the data that you've generated, then you will be rewarded for it, which is the same, you know, with actual real estate that you own. If you develop something on your real estate that generates revenue, you know, like renting it out, or you put an amusement park there or whatever, then there's actually a way for you to monetize that virtual real estate. So the way we think of virtual real estate is around these lighthouse markers rather than selling you plots of land on a map. Every lighthouse is, you know, entitled to whatever calibration fees is associated with scanning that lighthouse. And in a later stage, when we start doing the actual environmental mapping, those environmental maps will be using the lighthouse as the fundamental reference. So even if I didn't scan your QR code, but I scanned the environment that is attached to your QR code, you would still get the calibration fee.
And is there like a, you know, if you set up a lighthouse, is there like a circle or like an area where no one else can set up a second one? Or will you have like one place where there's like dozens of them?
So this gets very complicated. So we definitely need to enforce like minimum distance between the lighthouses. And in the case that there's a new lighthouse showing up that is too close to another lighthouse, then we would give preference to the oldest lighthouse. But you also have to stake tokens onto each lighthouse to be eligible to earn the calibration rewards. And that's how we know that you have a financial incentive not to spam out these lighthouses and put them in a poor way. So it should require some investment to own virtual real estate, essentially.
Yes. And what you're building, I think the most important aspect, you know, maybe not the most important, but one of the most interesting aspects is that it's applicable in the real world as well as in the metaverse, right?
We certainly hope so. People don't necessarily think about how important positioning is as a problem, but hopefully, you know, we've already picked up on in this conversation that without proper positioning, we can't do things like shared AR. Another, you know, example that I really like for why positioning is very important. I lived in Beijing for 7 years, and you know, Beijing is a small town of some 25 million people or so, and the average commute in Beijing is 2 hours. The average commute is 2 hours. That means if you do the math really quickly on, you know, how many adult humans are out commuting in just Beijing and how much time are they stuck in traffic every day, the answer is, get this, 2,500 years of human productivity are lost every day to Beijing traffic. 2,500 years of human productivity are lost to Beijing traffic every day. Similar numbers for Mexico City, similar numbers for Tokyo. And if, you know, we could wave our hands and say that, you know, well, in the future, self-driving cars will fix this problem because self-driving cars will be able to, you know, coordinate and traffic together. No, they can't unless we solve positioning. Because if you want automated cars to be, you know, zooming through traffic at 120 miles an hour and not colliding with each other, they need to be communicating their position to each other with centimeters of precision, not meters of precision. So if you're envisioning a world where there are self-driving cars that self-coordinate, then you are implicitly demanding a positioning solution. And without that positioning solution, the future with automated cars removing traffic jams is just science fiction. Like, it can't happen without proper positioning.
This is Squaba. Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So you were talking about other applications, and I had a question about using it for military or industrial applications. How do you feel about like a government or a corporation? Like I know Amazon tracks all its people using armbands, or a government using it for drones or for tracking people.
Obviously, I don't think it's very nice to be living under constant surveillance. And that's one of the motivations we have for trying to build things in a more privacy preserving way. And Auki's business model is in no way knowing things about you and your data. Like that's our commitment to the world, that we're not going to try to make money off of your data. But that, of course, doesn't stop someone else building on our technology to be recording a lot of data about you. So you still need to exercise your awareness as a consumer and know what it is you're signing up for. Take Niantic as an example. I'm very confused how Niantic can be saying that they've mapped out thousands of locations using their players. When I sign up to Pokemon Go, they tell me explicitly in the terms of service that they're not recording my data. I don't know how to square that. So you need to be careful as a consumer where you sign away your data.
If a government or like someone came to you or a corporation and said, we want to use your technology to do this sort of tracking or to be able to control drones or something, is that something that you would be interested in pursuing? And also a follow-up would be, would you ever develop technology to block yourself from others tracking you through the Aukiverse? I know there's probably going to be other people like you said, other people doing the same thing, but is that something that you've thought about as kind of like reverse engineering it and helping privacy?
The only way to be safe that no one is tracking you with an electronic device is to not be using the electronic device. Like that is the unfortunate, hard answer. If a government came to us and asked, like, I want data on where Squaba is, we can rightfully say we don't know. We don't keep that data. However, if the government made an app that you use, then they might be able to record data about you. But we won't know anything about you. So the question is, are you using any software that the government can access the data for? They can't come to us and ask for it because we won't have it. But an app built on our platform might have been recording stuff about you.
So is there a way when you let apps build on your ecosystem to make it explicit for them to tell us if we really are? So for instance, like what Apple's doing with Facebook is when you launch the app after updating your phone, it says, do you want these guys to track your data, yes or no? Because of course, not everyone will have the time or the know-how to read through all these T's and C's to make sure that an app built on your platform is not going to be able to track us or doesn't want to track us. Is there a way that you can enforce that line with any application building saying, hey, make sure it's as clear as day if you are going to track them, yes or no, and they have to accept that yes or no?
So one way that we can try to disincentivize that kind of bad behavior is, of course, with the staking that the app developers have to do. Because we are thinking that instead of giving us a big license fee, you should just stake an amount as an app developer to get access to the protocol, and the amount that you stake will be proportionate to the amount of traffic that you think you'll be generating. And if it turns out that you are doing something that we would consider bad in terms of the rules of the protocol, we should have the ability to slash you. But in terms of, will we have better ability than Apple or Google to stop what's happening at the operating system level? Of course not, right? Like if we're trying to build a fundamental utility, which we're trying to build a fundamental utility here, akin to building the internet. At a certain point, we don't get to pick and choose who is using our technology. And that's one of the scary but also exciting things about decentralization. right? And we try to think about building the protocol in a way so it can't be abused in general, but I don't think that we should be putting ourselves in the position where we choose which kind of applications are allowed to use this positioning. But yeah,
No,
that's a
I
tough
agree.
ethical question. Like, we don't always feel good about realizing that, like, someone could potentially track you way better by abusing our system in ways that we didn't intend or didn't know how to prevent. But we're certainly trying. Like, it's a big concern of ours, and I guess ultimately what we're asking you to believe is that this is a bigger priority for us than it is for Apple or Google or Microsoft.
But then that's what I'm wondering, is because every time there's an application on Apple, for instance, or Google that goes against their terms of service, they get absolutely slam dunked.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if you will offer that same protection, if not more, if an application were to do something against, I know you constantly say about the slashing, but is there ways you can make more repercussions against those developers and make sure, for instance, those developers are KYC'd instead of just being anonymous app developers on the chain?
Yes, absolutely. And we can revoke access to the protocol, obviously. But the way we see that is, access should be revoked, not granted. So, if you pass the basic requirements for being on the network, and then you do something that is so bad that slashing you is not even enough, now we want to disallow any other version of this software from using the protocol again, then yeah, we have the ability to shut off that application. Like, it would be possible for us today to say that, Matterless, you don't get to use this protocol anymore.
And would there be a way for any legal repercussions? Because, of course, if I build an app in a basement and then it gets slashed, so what? I try again. Is there a way you can say, okay, no, now I'm going to throw you into, Pelican Bay or something?
I am not a legal expert, but obviously different countries have different regulations, and something that is illegal in one country may not necessarily be illegal in another. And at this stage of the company's growth, we are not planning on setting up our own government with its own enforceable laws and military. But come Series A, we'll look at it.
So sounds great. Can't wait for that government.
Like, it's not easy for us to, like, I want to give you guys the honest answer and not hype anything up here, right? Surveillance is very difficult to stop. Surveillance is very, very difficult to stop. And people can abuse the hardware and the electronics you have today, and they are abusing those things today. And we're never, as a species, going to be able to prevent all kinds of these kinds of surveillance abuses. So I think the best we can do at this stage is to not build business models around that abuse. And that's what I think that Google, Apple, Microsoft, Niantic are doing, is that they're literally building their business model on top of privacy abuses. And we want to try to do something different.
All right, Nils, I have to switch topics just for a minute here, because I announced the Aukiverse allocation reservations like a couple of minutes ago in our Waves channel, and just now for the regular community members. And people are screaming for bigger allocations per head. And, initially I asked you for 50K just because I want to be careful not to ask for too much, and also based on us already raising $1 million in Neo Tokyo, I still albeit me being extremely bullish on what you're building, I feel some sort of a responsibility to not get everyone sucked into the vortex of Auki, right?
Sure.
But I mean, people are bothering me and asking for a bigger allocation and so on. So maybe can you elaborate on up to which allocation size in total we could get?
I'd rather take that conversation offline after the AMA and use this time to take questions about the tech itself.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate it. Okay. So maybe because that's also something which is interesting to people. Do you have any news around the TGE date? And maybe you can also tell us what does it, what types of companies have, not just companies but also institutions. What kind of individuals and companies have approached you and tried to maybe buy Auki out? And then what would be the likelihood of something like that happening, and what would be happening to your investors if something like that occurs?
So for me personally, here's what I believe. And I am just a human, right? But this is my human belief. I believe that in the next 1 to 3 decades, the digital display will entirely die out, and augmented reality will be the main way that we interact with technology. But this will not happen until positioning is solved. And a quick back of the napkin calculation, using some simple assumptions. Today, there are 4.5 billion people using social media across the world. That's a 56% market penetration. I think that's as high as any tech reasonably can go. 56% of the world's population today is using social media, and they're using it on average 820 hours per year. So I believe it is safe to say that when augmented reality becomes the default way of interacting, saying that 820 hours per year would be the average for 4.5 billion people would be a very, very low estimate. If we, assumed that it is exactly, let's say 15 years from now, AR will have the same penetration as social media has today. And let's say that whoever built that positioning protocol could monetize as little as 1 cent per hour for access to this positioning protocol. Then at that point, that positioning protocol would already be making as much money as the entire iPhone series. We'd be talking at about $80 billion a year. But if you instead say that, okay, hold on, if the digital display is going out and the AR metaverse will be the main way that people interact with technology and the internet, would it be unreasonable to say that, well, maybe 15 years from now, the average person will pay as much to that protocol as they pay for internet access today? The average American pays $2 a day for internet access. And if we can get to the point where the average person spends $2 a day for metaverse access, and if you believe, like I believe, that spatial computing and positioning is the foundational winning tech that could allow you to win that race, then you're talking about potentially, to finish that math example, $3.2 trillion a year in revenue. I don't think there are a lot of opportunities like that in the world. I don't think there are many tech races you can be in that have this kind of impact. In fact, I think spatial computing and AI are the 2 biggest tech races there are, right? Outside of AI and potentially longevity. Those 3 things, positioning, AI, and longevity, are going to eat up more money than anything else, because the amount of money you could make on it is bigger than anything else. For me, positioning and building the AR metaverse, this is my Mars mission. I cannot use my imagination to think of a bigger project to build. So because of that, I'm not very interested in selling the company. If we sell the company, it'll be because we were forced to, not because we had to. We sold the company because we needed to get some kind of lifeline out when it was clear that we were losing the race. But our intention is not to lose the race. Because also, if we sell this tech to Apple, Google, whatever, then how are we stopping this dystopia from happening? I am not building Auki because I want to make money. I'm building Auki because I want to help, build the foundation that the world runs on. I'm narcissistic enough to admit that, right? I want to build something that matters much more than I want to make money. You guys can make money.
Nils, how do you balance that with your investors who obviously are interested in a return on investment?
Yeah, I think obviously, for the people that have invested in our project, we have a fiduciary responsibility to try our best to generate a positive return for them. That being said, buying our tokens should not be construed as an investment. You've bought an allocation in tokens that will, run this ecosystem, and I wouldn't want to describe it as an investment. That being said, if we build technology that is impactful, that makes the world better, then a rising tide should lift all boats here.
And someone was asking regarding the longevity, which you just mentioned earlier, the three different industries or avenues which are going to be built in the future, is positioning, AI, and longevity. Can you elaborate what longevity means?
So longevity is just life-extending technology, age reversal, people trying to live forever. Like a lot of money will go into that over the next few decades. And a lot of money will go into AI, and a lot of money will go into positioning, because whoever solves any one of those unlocks such a big competitive advantage over other people. It's hard to meaningfully even put a number to it. If you build...
Yeah, and I think there's already, when you look at the spend in healthcare, I think the biggest chunk of the total spend in healthcare is spent on the last year of people being alive.
Yeah. Well, I genuinely believe that the company that solves positioning, if they do it in the right way, can become the most valuable company in the world, literally. And that's what we want to try to do. We want to try to build the biggest company in the world. So if that's the goal, why flip to Apple?
Yes, and so I've heard that you've already been contacted by the U.S. military or the U.S. government. Can you talk about how such a conversation goes?
So the kind of problems that they have are not as nefarious as you might suspect. There are problems like being able to do aircraft repair, for example, right? Where it would be very helpful for a technician to have an AR overlay to see how the airplane should look. But also, some of these airplanes are so sensitive that it would be unacceptable to have a camera pointing at them, right? So how do you do AR, which is entirely camera-based, when cameras are not allowed on the base, right? So they have these kinds of catch-22 problems where they would love to use AR for reasonable things like tank repair and aircraft repair, but they don't want cameras to be looking at the equipment. And I think that's something that we could really help with, and I think that would be a meaningful thing, a meaningful contribution to make. But of course, positioning technology has some pretty impactful consequences for how war might be waged. So one example that I think I brought up in our previous AMA is how our technology in theory would allow for stereoscopic reconstruction from heat-based cameras. So what does that mean? Well, any camera lacks depth perception, right? They just see 2D images, which means if you have a heat camera, right? If you plug a little heat camera onto this phone, then you can see in screen space where is this heat signature, but you don't know how far away this heat signature is. But in theory, if we had two different phones, we could actually figure out how far away that object is with stereoscopic reconstruction. This is how we see depth with our two eyes. We need two eyes to be able to see depth. If you only had one eye, you wouldn't have depth perception. And with our positioning technology, one thing that would in theory be possible to build, and that we're sketching out building a prototype of, is letting two cameras with 2 heat sensors be positioned to each other and do stereoscopic reconstruction of those heat cameras. So you could imagine, for example, that I'm holding one heat camera over here and you're holding another heat camera over here, and we point them towards the same signature. And now, because we're pointing them towards the same heat signature, we can triangulate how far away the distance is and even recreate for people wearing AR glasses where that heat signature is, even though you don't have a heat camera. So how, what does that open up? Well, that opens up, for example, that if you had 2 drones in the air with heat cameras and you had Marines with AR visors, in theory, our tech would allow for those Marines to have a literal wall hack where, they could see where the heat signatures are in 3D space. And technology like that would obviously have a very big impact on how wars are fought. And it's something that keeps us up at night thinking, is this a good thing to build or not? Will the world be a better place or a worse place if we develop technology like this? And my personal philosophy when it comes to involvement with the military is I think it's always bad to make bombs and other indiscriminate weapons, but making war more efficient and creating less civilian casualties, I think is a moral necessity. Unless you invent something that removes war altogether, it is a moral good and a moral imperative to try to make it so that war is fought in ways that minimize human suffering. And we try to have that as a guiding light when thinking about how can we interact with governments and military forces for using this technology. We don't say automatically no to working with military because it might be that we could build something out here that could have life-saving consequences. And if we can save lives, then we must save lives.
Yeah, I don't want to dive too much into the moral and ethical avenues here because, a lot of this can turn out to be very subjective because it depends, which side you grant access to the technology, right? Because if the other side gets more efficient, it might not be in your best interest. And regarding the tech being potentially dangerous in the wrong hands and, is it smart to build something like that? I think the argument here is that if you don't do it, eventually someone else is going to do it. And then the question becomes, are they going to be as morally and ethically responsible as you are? And, obviously I don't know you, on such a deep level, but given the conversations we had in the past and the AMAs we had, I feel very comfortable that you are in a position to make the right decisions for humanity and not making decisions who are solely based on your financial gains, because that's very obvious that this is not your goal. And to me, that it makes sense that someone like this is probably the one who should hold the keys to such power.
That's very kind of you to say. I'm not as confident myself that we can, make the right decisions, but we can certainly remove the financial incentive to make the wrong decisions. I think that's a good place to start. So not making it our business model to be monetizing people's data is a good place to start to remove the financial incentive for wrongdoing. But I like everyone else on our team is flawed human beings trying to make the best of our technology. But I genuinely believe that most of the people that are on our team, hopefully everyone that is on our team, is working on this technology because they want to build it. We are not bankers, we're not investors. We're technologists that have thought long and hard about how to make a contribution, and this is the contribution we want to make.
It's amazing that you say to us that you're trying to build the biggest company on the planet, and you still sound so humble saying that.
Well, ultimately, the biggest company in the world, I think, will not be built by an individual, right? What our thesis here is that a community effort can, for the AR metaverse, and the AR metaverse is literally a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity, you have the opportunity to build the biggest kind of company, the biggest company that the world has ever seen. And I think that's a much cooler ambition than looking to flip something in the next bull market.
No, 100%. And this goes very well along with what we have intended for vVv. My ambition is to eventually have the biggest VC company on the planet and also the biggest and most successful hedge fund company. And that hedge fund company is going to be designed to be accessible by the small guy, so to speak. So everything which we're building is also community driven. And I think that has attracted a certain type of investment opportunities in which we are interested and but there's a lot of overlap with the values which we share. And to me, this is super important because we don't want to make investments into things. The only way to make money is to flip them at the right point in time. We want to make investments who have impact on the world and where the timing is not as important, where it's really just about being a part of it, and where if the thing plays out, it's going to play out well at a large scale. And it's not something where, the thing either goes well once and then that's that, but it is something where we have a long-term play and where we have an upside which is going past like a couple of weeks or months, but it's where we really see something with a big potential for the next 2 to 10 years.
I think something that I've asked a lot of our investors to think about is, their role in the ecosystem. I'm a big believer in the economy of attention. So what does that believe? That it means at any given moment, there's only so many creative, competent people in the world that can be building truly changing things, and whatever they're paying attention to, that's what's going to get built. And a lot of what dictates where they'll spend their attention is where investors put their money. Like when you are a VC, you are being a resource allocator and you are shaping which way human attention is going. So if you don't want to live in a world of, play to earn Ponzi schemes, then you shouldn't fund those things, because what you're doing by funding those things is you're generating human attention towards them. And the people that are building those things will not be building other things. Human attention is a very scarce supply. And I hope that more investors can take on the responsibility that you just, spoke of, to be good resource allocators and think mindfully of where are we putting our money to work, like what technology will this money bring about? Because, what you're doing by buying allocation in Auki, from my point of view, is that you're incentivizing us to build this platform. Like that's ultimately what's happening. And, hopefully our incentives are aligned so everyone benefits. But at the end of the day, what you're doing by buying allocation in Auki is ensuring that we do this work. And the same goes for any other investment you make. Like when you invest in these things, you're directing human attention towards it. So if you think it's worthwhile to try to avoid, surveillance capitalism, then look for projects like ours and support them, because they need your support. Otherwise it's going to be Google and Amazon all the way.
Yeah, to be honest, Nils, that segment alone right now was already worth having the AMA, simply because I have never looked at it this way. But looking back at the past couple of investments which you have brought to the community, what you said is spot on. So, and this is, so I mentioned to you Snickerdoodle in private before, where I think there might be a lot of synergies between you guys. And what they are building is pretty much the protocol which protects the consumer's privacy when they make online purchases, for example, or when we talk about digital ID and so on. So they are building like a trustless protocol where you actually end up owning your data. It's not Facebook, it's not Apple, it's not Google who's owning your data, but it's actually you. And then you decide who you grant access to what data. And then on the flip side, they have like an incentivizing model for businesses where, let's say, you purchase shoes from Nike. Now you get that Nike shoe as an NFT as well. And in order to get that NFT, you're going to have to grant them insights into certain data points of you. But you can freely decide whether or not you want to take that reward and you want to grant them insights into the data points, or if you want to stay completely private. And they pretty much have the potential to grant humanity access to universal basic income. So I think there's a lot of overlap here, even if the technology doesn't overlap, or the projects themselves. I think the values have such a great overlap, where I think just them opening up their Rolodexes, since they have a lot of experience working with governments and big companies, could already be very beneficial to Auki.
I think there are a lot of very interesting companies in the space, and I would encourage any Web3 investment community to really be mindful of this economy of attention and what kind of things you're giving the resources to, because you can literally put your finger on the scale of human history and help. To me, the most exciting thing that's happening with crypto is that now projects can get funded and supported and sustained by a community that believes in what they're building, rather than a VC that has a certain time horizon to get a return. And it wasn't possible before, I think, to have a company like Auki prior to this cryptocurrency technology being invented, and the market that created for crowdfunding projects. I think that's super exciting in human history that this is happening, and I think it's a huge responsibility put on you guys that are allocating resources to really be mindful of where are you guiding human attention, what is going to be built because you funded it.
No, 100%. And it's not just the money. For me, it's also getting, like we have now, 200 people in an AMA. We have to be really careful who we bring on. I don't want people to, and we have a lot of people from Australia and from Asia where that's 4 a.m. and they set their alarm to attend the AMA. So I have to be really careful, not just with what investment opportunities we bring and where people invest their money. We also have to be careful who they actually listen to and who we bring to the community, where people then start spending time with them, on researching, on talking with them, and so on. Because there's a limit to, how much tolerance people have, where attention might be misguided into things which eventually turn out not being of value to them.
Yeah.
So we do an immense amount of screening. We look at probably 5 to 10 projects daily, and we filter out 99.9% of all those projects. And then we only really bring on the best of the best. And, in this case, it's you. And you're setting the record here in our still fairly new server with an attendance rate of 200 people. And rightfully so, in my opinion, since, you want to build the biggest company on the planet. You have extremely honorable intentions with what you're building. And I think this really speaks to what the community wants and where we also want the community to focus.
I'm very flattered to be here. Again, I'm glad you guys aren't tired of listening to me.
And Nils, I'm not going to stop chasing you. I mean, we are extremely curious about where your journey is going, and we have so much to learn from you, and we are going to stay interested through the good and the bad.
I hope that you guys are excited about the already $1 million of human attention that you have brought towards this project. We're very grateful for the support, and we're really trying to do something meaningful with it.
Nils, you mentioned a little bit earlier that Animoca is building something on your protocol. Do you have any insights you can share with us?
I think that would be breaching NDA.
Okay. Then let me check. Yeah, I took note of a couple of questions from the community, and I don't want them to get missed. Let me just quickly read up on them, and
Sure.
then
Let me just
read
get
them
my
out
power
loud.
cord really quick, because I see I'm running low on battery. Let me just get my power cord. Give me 10 seconds.
Okay. Yes, for sure. Thank you.
All right, let's do questions.
All right. So first question is, are there any metaverse projects currently planning partnerships with you?
Yes, there are, but I'm gonna come with a dose of really tough truth here for the crypto investment community, and I really hope you're listening. Most of the metaverse projects out there aren't actually building anything, just so you know. Like, we have spoken now to several projects, and I've been told not to name and shame, so I'm not going to name and shame. But we've spoken to several metaverse projects now that are, you know, highly backed with very big name investors, and they're fundamentally not really building anything. So we have stopped pursuing other metaverse builders as potential clients because it seems like most of them are not sincere. And no code is being written. So we are more targeting traditional AR developers than other metaverse developers because we don't know where to find the sincere ones. Now, that being said, there are a handful of other metaverse plays that we think are very sincere and have very talented teams, and we're looking forward to helping them bring shared AR to what they're doing. But I just want to remind everyone in this chat that, like, most under hashtag metaverse is not sincere.
Yeah, we're very well aware of that. Believe me, we've seen so many companies who have raised tens of millions of dollars already, and then I listen to them 5 minutes on a call, and I already know it's like just bullshit and pretty much just a scam. And sometimes I'm stunned what kind of big names allocate a lot of money to those projects.
I don't think we'll see any really cool metaverse projects on our platform or anyone else's this year. I think it's still very early. I think the metaverse is definitely going to happen, but right now, like, the term, like, anyone that's building anything in Unreal calls it a metaverse. Like, if an online game is just a metaverse now, then sure, like, we are talking to other metaverse or other games that are looking to develop on our tech, definitely. And a lot of these games are super cool. But for the kind of people that say that are really like building metaverses, with the really big marketing budgets where they're talking about interoperability this and interoperability that, off the top of my head, I don't know that I could mention a sincere one.
Yeah. So I have one very interesting question, which probably goes way into the future of Auki. And the question is, do you believe Auki has any future use cases or benefits in treating disease or intervention inside humans on the nano level?
So the interesting thing with positioning in general is that there is no inherent quality to any, cubic millimeter or place in the universe that you can interrogate to find what the position is. Absolute position is an illusion of the human mind. Everything is positioned relatively. And that means that for everything that has to move around and reason about the world, big or small, it needs some kind of positioning protocol. Do we believe that positioning protocols can have an impact at a nano level? Well, yes, absolutely. But I don't know yet. Like, all I know is they need it. If you want to have a swarm of nano drones that are repairing a liver or whatever, they need to be able to communicate with each other about each position. I am not a nano engineer, so I couldn't tell you the first thing about how this will happen. But the very simple answer is anything that needs to know where it is needs positioning. Full stop.
Nils, how much time do we have with you today? Just so I can plan ahead.
I can do another 45 minutes.
Okay, awesome. So guys, if you have any questions, please put them in our general chat. And also, please feel free to jump on VC and ask your questions live in voice. I think the dynamic of you guys speaking up as well is more enjoyable than just me reading them out.
Yeah, if you do want to ask me a question in text, please tag me because the chat is moving faster than I can keep up.
Let me just read through some of my notes here to see that I covered all the questions up until now. So how do you see the use cases in regards to potentially collaborating with someone like Tesla, where the self-driving cars greatly benefit from them actually knowing their accurate positioning and the positioning of other cars?
We would love to work with a company like Tesla. We've made some overtures already to another self-driving car company, not Tesla, but we've made some overtures already to another self-driving car company to learn more about how they are reasoning about this problem and how far away, this problem is for them. Because, it's all well and good to say that, self-driving cars won't be in self-organizing fleets until we solve positioning. But if they think that's 15 years away, then, there's not much point selling positioning to them today.
Yes.
So we're still learning from these self-driving car companies and robotics companies what they believe the timelines are for these kinds of use cases. So, we believe that from first principles, we understand that self-driving cars will need this technology eventually. The question is, do they need it in 6 months or do they need it in 6 years? We don't know.
So since Auki can solve so many different problems, what are the more imminent milestones which you're currently working on? Like, let's say towards the end of the year, what are the deliverables which you have set out for yourself?
So we just released the first internal build of SDK version 0.4. And 0.4 is the first candidate for a fully commercializable SDK, meaning that we could put this out as a public beta. Hopefully we can charge a bit of money for it. And what's in that SDK, the core features, of course, the instant calibration. But the instant calibration doesn't work without the proprietary networking engine that we've built as well, which, that's a whole other AMA that we could do because it's pretty cool what we built there. Like the networking engine could be a startup in its own right. And so we have the instant calibration, we have the networking engine, and what these two things enable together is a third thing, which is collaborative SLAM. Collaborative SLAM, meaning that we can actually improve the results of AR over time so that the session doesn't drift by having the devices collaboratively reason about the world. And the fourth thing that's in the SDK is the monocular 3D hand reconstruction, meaning we have made it possible for a single camera phone, which, this is a single camera phone, even though it looks like there's 3 cameras on here, because it's only looking through one camera at a time. For a single camera to do depth estimation of hands so that you can reach out and touch things in AR, even if you don't have a LiDAR, which we think is a big idea, a big idea.
Yeah, I've seen that video, Nils. Can you drop it in our general chat here, maybe?
Ooh, yes. Let me go hunt for that.
Because to me, it's still like borderline unbelievable how you actually do that, right?
Thank you. I'm gonna get you the ugliest demo so you know it's real. How about that? let's go get an ugly demo here. I'm gonna upload this to your chat. Can I put it in the general chat?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So what you're seeing here is monocular 3D hand reconstruction. So we're looking through the world through only one camera. There's no LiDAR, and the ball lights up green when the hand is touching the thing. So this is something that Niantic can't do today. Apple is not doing it today. Google is not doing it today. Niantic just announced a competitor to the Matterless pets called Peridot, and when you pet the Peridot, you rub the screen. But when you pet a Matterless pet, you'll be able to touch it in space because we have this technology. We think that's a huge thing. And of course, it will be available for other app developers using the Auki tech as well.
Do you also have the video where you have the hand, where you have like, you know, the what's the term in English? The joints, where you have the joints like reconstructed?
Yes, okay. Let me get that for you.
You know, it's one thing to describe Auki in voice, but to actually see it, the digital skeleton. I mean, that's just, you know, these are things which, if you have used any AR software in the past, these are things which are simply impossible. Like it's impossible to do this with any other software or protocol. And then seeing you know, just doing it live is just insane.
So we've been incredibly lucky to be able to recruit Dr. Zhongpai Gao, who is the lead on this 3D hand reconstruction. He's, in my opinion, one of the very foremost 3D reconstruction people in the world. He's a PhD from Jiaotong University, which is like the MIT of China. It's a very, very, very good university. And we've been very, very lucky to have him on the team, working on this full time for a full pregnancy now. You know, like he's been working on this for 9 months.
All right, let me read out one question here from the community. In relation to supply chain optimization, most of it is done through the transfer of data and information about the state of where inventory raw materials are. Do you think positioning can reinvent the way we understand the current status of goods in motion?
I hope so. But like, I'm not a logistics expert, but it seems to me that having a better understanding of where things are is better, you know, all else being equal. How big the impact will be for the logistics industry, I don't know. But I know that the logistics industry are already big clients for the indoor positioning market. So they're clearly, you know, interested in improved positioning. And we'll see how much our technology can impact that industry.
Okay, next question from Iban. Does the token ecosystem rely on crypto fluency, i.e., is it important for crypto non-natives to be onboarded in order for Auki ecosystem to be successful? Or is it enough for the current crypto population, very small compared to overall population, to sustain this ecosystem?
So we're not targeting the crypto community in any way, really. Like the app developer will have the option of either setting up a wallet for themselves or having us manage it for them, you know, depending on how sophisticated they want to be as users. But it's ultimately the app developer that interacts with the token in what we think is the ideal scenario. Like our APIs technically allow an app developer to make an app that would ask the end user to provide their own wallet so that the end user could pay for their own Auki traffic. But we don't think that's what people will choose to do. Like no one does that with AWS today, where like you have to sign up with your credit card to pay for the AWS fees before you're let onto your app. Like we don't think that's the way the world is going to go. So for people using apps that use our technology, they don't even need to know that crypto exists.
And Nils, for areas where there's like almost none or very bad or no phone reception at all, does Auki still work there?
No, I mean, ours is an internet protocol today. We are working on direct peer-to-peer connections. So like one of the things we're really excited about our decentralized networking engine is we've, you know, I don't want to talk too nerdy about how it's made, but it's efficient enough now that it can run on 16 megabytes of RAM, meaning in theory you should be able to host a networking a networking server on your phone. And by the time we get to it running natively on your phone, then we could be doing positioning directly peer-to-peer, even in an internet-less environment. You just, provided the devices have something like Bluetooth or Wi-Fi to speak to each other. In such a scenario, yes. But otherwise, as I said, there is no inherent quality to any cubic millimeter that describes what position it is. So with any positioning scenario that is not GPS, if you don't have internet, it will not work.
Yes. Another question from Strider. What are your current pain points, especially stuff where the community could help you with?
We're a little bit too early to know what our big pain points are. The things that we struggle with as a company now is, growth pains. We've gone from 2 people to 50, and I'm including the Matterless team there. But if we just look at Auki, we've gone from 2 to 30 people in the span of a year. And onboarding people and making sure that we find the right people and people that believe in our vision and these kinds of things is a challenge. When we release version 0.4 and we go into public beta, I think we'll learn a lot about what our actual technical problems are. But right now, from the feedback we're getting from our beta testers, I think we're on a very good track.
Let me just check the questions again. How? Okay,
go ahead. I
Nils.
address a question here, if you don't mind. I saw LifeCourt asking, to have a smooth AR experience, do you need 5G? So to have an AR experience, you technically don't need internet at all. That's just reliant on you having SLAM, right? So the better your SLAM is, the smoother your AR experience will be. But to do collaborative SLAM, to have a shared AR experience, you'll need to have some kind of networking connection. But no, you don't need 5G. In fact, because our approach to the collaborative SLAM is more semantic or memetic than it is topographical, like we send less information about what the terrain looks like, we send about 2 to 3 orders of magnitude less data per participant per second. So you don't need 5G.
Nils, just to come back to one of the first questions, and please let me know if that topic like either bothers you or bores you, because I want to keep the AMA exciting for you, of course. But can you give us any specifics? Maybe the time for your TGE.
Oh, right. Yes. Sorry, I didn't mean to avoid that question.
of the Lighthouse.
Yeah. So I didn't mean to avoid that question. Because I'm quite new to the crypto space, and so are my co-founders, we're being very careful and trying to learn everything from first principles, because one of the things that we believe is the crypto market is so young that there aren't really any experts in it yet, which means that we have to take responsibility for ourselves to really understand what it is we're doing, and there's no one else that we can just point and blame. So one of the ethical decisions we made, which is also, if I'm being honest, a little bit pragmatic, because I was, nervous about making decisions I didn't understand, was that we would not fund what we're doing by launching a token before we build something. We're going to build something and then launch a token. So for us, it's very important to demonstrate the utility of the token before we do a TGE. So on day 1 of the token trading on an exchange, our hope is that the token already, does what it says on the can, and it can be used in the ecosystem. And that means, I think, realistically, that we're still several months away before we can start looking at a proper TGE. I think we could have a testnet implementation up and running maybe in the next 3 months. We've just started sketching on our first smart contracts now. I'm pretty excited with how far we've gotten over the last 6 months, and the advisors we have. We work a lot with Outlier Ventures and the faculty group, Faculty VC. They've been indispensable advisors. I think legally, if you've read through the SAFT, we have to do a TGE before September next year. So somewhere between 6 months from now to September next year is when we'll launch the token.
And Nils, and this is a slightly selfish question, but for your advisors and for your VC investors, what were the most important aspects you were looking for them, and how, like, I'm sure it disqualified a lot of potential investors, right? So what were the biggest red flags for you in not going with a certain investor?
I think what really made us trust Outlier and faculty so much is that they had very long conversations with us about the ethical implications of what we're building. They were very concerned. They demonstrated to us that their mind went places where we wanted to go. And we had a very good time with both faculty and Outlier, learning more about this space and understanding what the ethical landscape looks like. What are the options we have? What can we do good? What can we do poorly? So we chose them, I think, more for their moral compass than their technical competence, if that makes sense. We were looking for people that we knew we could trust to make difficult decisions with us.
Yes, that makes total sense. Someone is asking, and I've seen this question come up before, why are you operating from China? Big brother everywhere.
I mean, the flippant answer is that's just where I live, so that's where I was when I founded the company, because that's where I lived when I founded the company. I've been in Greater China for the last 10 years or so, and so have my co-founders. We've been living and operating in the Greater China space for a long time and learned a lot from being there. And there are certainly, bad things about China when it comes to surveillance and the like. I do want to point out that Hong Kong is different, and you should care about what happens to Hong Kong. But yeah, we're thinking about removing ourselves from the Greater China ecosystem because of the importance of the work we're doing and the risk that staying there might pose. But there are not a lot of other, I'm not an American, so I'm not going to have a lot of nice things to say about America. Being here in San Francisco right now and seeing how mismanaged this civilization is, I wouldn't throw too many rocks at China, personally.
So Niels, how much money have you raised till date, and how much runway does Auki have at the moment?
So we have, Auki has raised a total of 13 million to date, I believe. And with the burn that we have projected, when we are done expanding and we have put money aside for marketing, that should be 36 months, which we're very pleased to be able to operate for 3 years without having to worry about tightening our belts. And
Yes.
Matterless has raised $7 million, which should be a comparable time frame. So hopefully, even we should be able to weather even a 3-year bear market.
Have you noticed any change in tone from your investors given the current market conditions, or is there no impact at all?
The community VCs have gone very quiet, that's for sure. They've all but disappeared. I have seen proposed check sizes go down, so people that were interested in putting in $1 million all of a sudden want to put in 100K, stuff like that. And I think right now people are kind of holding their breath and trying to figure out what to do. So not a lot is happening right now. We don't see a lot of deals being made in general, but we're also not actively fundraising at the moment.
Do you plan on doing additional rounds which go beyond the $120 million evaluation?
I mean, probably we've actually left another 7 million of allocation available at the 120 million mark, just in case we find the right kinds of partners. So there is more allocation available. There's 7 million of allocation available, but we're not super incentivized to go grab that 7 million because we don't need 7 million more right now. Like being undercapitalized is not our biggest issue.
And when do you guys plan to generate the first revenues?
Hopefully this year. So as I said, we just released the internal build of version 0.4. If that gets a clean bill of health from our beta testers, then we will be putting that out hopefully by, my CTO said July, so I'm going to say September. Hopefully we'll have it out and commercialized by September. I feel very confident that we'll be able to have it out by the end of the year for sure, and hopefully make our first revenue.
Okay, amazing. So how can people participate in your beta testing?
If you're building applications, the best way is if you're building something on Unity, because the Unity SDK is the most advanced so far. But if you're building on Unreal, that's also okay. You just go to discord.gg/Aukiverse and let us know that you want to build a demo, and we'll help you build a demo.
All right. And do you have any time frame for the Lighthouse NFT? Is that going to be live before the TGE, since the utility of the token should be already there in your eyes?
We'll see. Right now, we're still building out the actual lighthouses, regardless of their NFT-ness. And I want to have a very clear picture of when those are done before I start speculating on when the NFT aspect of it is done. But I think best case scenario for the lighthouses is that they will be ready at the time of the TG.
Okay, amazing. So I have one interesting question from Brilliant. In connection with selling the company, in theory, often with startups, it's the case that investors own the company and the team runs the company. Do you guys, as a Nils plus team, still own the majority of Auki?
Yes, we own the majority of Auki.
Did you even sell equity, or did you just take on token investments?
We have sold equity. We've sold about 20-25%, I believe, of all the equity in the company. But we went back to because we've actually been around since 2019. And we raised our first money back in 2019. And then a year ago, we invented the instant calibration technique, and we pivoted and we changed name. And we kept on our old equity investors. We just renamed the company because we wanted to do right by our investors and not, just bail on them. So we went back and told them that we will give them a pro rata token allocation from the team pool. So the people that bought our equity are sharing the team pool with us. So let's say, for the sake of simplicity, that we've sold 25% of the equity, then 25% of the team pool will go to the equity investors. And now we are hoping that the value, should accrue in the token if we build things in a healthy way. That's the interesting challenge of building a Web3 company is can you make it run on the operating system of tokens?
Would you also potentially consider buying other companies? Is that like an avenue you have explored yet?
We are in active such talks right now. Yeah.
Oh, okay, interesting.
That's one of the great things that that we hope that the community will be able to help us with, is help us fund acquisitions of well-meaning teams that could be doing better somewhere else.
Okay. Oh, that's very interesting because I haven't seen a lot of projects actually actively pursuing mergers and acquisitions or buying out other teams.
I am actively looking at least one of the companies that have been mentioned in the chat today as a potential acquisition.
Okay, so I have to go back and screen the chat history here. Let me see if there's any other questions from the community.
Yes, obviously it's Apple and Google. You got me.
Nils, maybe to recap, can you give me like a very brief rundown of the pros and cons between GPS or other positioning solutions with Niantic has Marvel, for example, and Auki, just so people get a really clear understanding of why we are that interested in what you guys are building.
Sure. So let's start by comparing to Niantic, and then let's compare to the GPS. What Niantic does is if you try Pokemon Go's Shared AR, here's what will happen. First, it will ask you to download some additional software. So you will do that. Then it will create a QR code for you, and then you will I will scan your QR code, and now we're in a lobby together. And when a maximum of 8 people are in the lobby, a maximum of 8, but they recommend not being more than 2 or 3. When a maximum of 8 people are in the lobby, we can click proceed. And now it will ask us to point our cameras at an object in the distance together, and then we click next. We have to stand next to each other, shoulder to shoulder when we do this. So actually the first thing it says, stand next to each other, shoulder to shoulder. We do that, we press next. Then it says, point your cameras at an object in the distance. We do that, we press next. And then it asks us to slowly circle around the object together. Just bear with me while I do this. And then like 30,
oh, Nils,
60 seconds
just
later,
give me one moment. Let me share the stream here once again, because I think most people are just listening in.
All right.
So everyone, if you guys want to see the visual example which Nils is providing us with, I will post the link in general chat once again, and I will also pin it. And please check out the live stream on YouTube. Just make sure that you then mute the live stream, since we will have a little bit of a lag between the two voice channels.
So what Niantic's approach is essentially they're asking all of the devices to do a 3D scan of what they're looking at the same time, and then upload those 3D scans into their little machine learning tumble dryer that will help calculate a relative position to the object that you're pointing your cameras at. And that, it works. It'll place things, in our experience, with somewhere to 3 to 15 centimeters of precision, which is, not bad, certainly not great. It's not as good as ours. But it takes a long time. Everyone has to do it at the same time. And our approach is very different. We don't need to know anything about the environment because we position off of each other. So we only need the second step in this whole thing. You remember, so with Niantic, you first download additional software, then you create a QR code. That's the only step we need, right? So if you've seen the demo video, I'm gonna post a demo video here, which you will see. This is not CGI. We make a point of just recording live demos. You won't find demos like this on Niantic's website, so eat your heart out. This is actually what it looks like. For my Matterless co-founder Damir to join my session here, literally all he does is scan my QR code, and then we are more precisely positioned than Niantic does. And I believe in February at the previous demo I did with you guys, we were 50 people doing a live demo through the web client, whereas Niantic supports a maximum of 8, but recommends not doing more than 2 or 3. And since our previous AMA, we have done tests with bots where we were 500 people in one session. So Our solution is faster to calibrate. It doesn't require additional downloads. It uses a lot less data, and it supports orders of magnitude more participants at the same time. Brilliant. We have filed 4 patents to date. None of them are granted yet, but we have filed 4 patents to date. So we think, if you look at this demo video, we think that this is the breakthrough that AR has been waiting for, literally. The ability for someone to jump in after the fact and just see what the other person is seeing. We don't have to set this up at the same time. We don't have to do some complicated physical ritual. Just fucking scan the QR code and you're in.
So what's the likelihood, Nils, of someone else coming up? Let me phrase the question differently. So I think you are, to a big extent, playing on being the first mover, right? Because once the world is in the race of mapping the world, then there's pretty much no one else who can catch up. What's the likelihood of someone else starting now? Or do you see anyone, are you seeing yourselves in competition with anyone else at the moment? Or do you think that you are on the track of being the one and only?
I think we're the only ones today taking our specific approach, but someone could certainly copy our approach. And it's possible that we won't get any of our patents. And it's possible, even if we get the patents, that someone's going to just copy it anyhow. How long have Samsung and Apple been fighting over their patents? At the end of the day, the only security we can have is remembering that we live in an economy of attention, and our competitive advantage needs to be that we recruit the best people and do the hardest work. And if we can't do that, then we won't win. I think the strength of Auki as a project today is if you go to our black paper, blackpaper.aukiverse.com, and you look at the quality of the engineers that are working on these projects, and these are full-time, mind you. These are not some part-time contributors to your random hashtag metaverse bullshit project. These are people that are dedicating their careers to building this. I'm very proud of the engineering talent we have and how motivated they are to do the right thing. I have the pleasure of working with people that have been making games in assembly since the 90s and made VR headsets before Google Cardboard was even a thing. These are really talented, experienced people. And I am more worried about someone else recruiting the right people than someone copying our approach, because I think the right people will build the right solution.
Wasn't there someone you hired from Facebook, if I recall our very first call?
We may have. I don't remember if we have any Facebook staff. I mean, we've recruited from a lot of the big companies. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think a couple of those joined you even with less pay.
Yeah. A lot of people have taken a substantial pay cut to work on this project because it's a meaningful thing to work on.
Yeah, and I think that says a lot about the quality of people you are able to find with having a vision that goes beyond just making money or beyond a centralized place of power.
I believe, and you can think I'm stupid for believing this, but I'll claim it to the death. There is repeatable, verifiable research that shows that when people think about money, they have a measurable lowering of their IQ. These are Nobel Prize winning scientists that have demonstrated this. And I genuinely believe that someone that is thinking about money will never, ever build something meaningful. I think it's entirely impossible to make a meaningful contribution to the world while you're thinking about money. I don't think that there's a banker in the world that would be missed if he was hit by a bus. Have you heard of the candle problem?
Can you repeat that once more?
The candle problem. So this will blow your guys' mind, right? So here's a classic psychological experiment where, and this will fly, in the faces of what, any MBA student will tell you, but maybe that's just, why you shouldn't get an MBA. The candle problem is very simple. You are taken into a room, and in that room there's a table. And on the table is a little cardboard box full of thumbtacks and a candle and a lighter. And your task is to find a way to burn the candle without getting any wax on the table, right? And they do this with two groups of people. One where they say they'll give them money if they solve it, and one where they don't. And for the people that don't get money, they solve this riddle, because it's a riddle, in less than a minute. But the people that are given money for it need it on average 4.5, right? So if you are building something because you're motivated by money, you're going to do a terrible job at it. You're going to be outcompeted by someone that's actually passionate about what they're doing.
Yeah, it goes back to what, and I know you're not the biggest fan of Steve Jobs, if I recall this correctly, but it goes back to what he said, where, if you're not passionate about what you're doing, you're not going to go through the tough times. And I think Elon Musk said the same thing, where, building what you're building or what we are building is like chewing glass and staring into an abyss. Like, it's not always fun to build, and it's not always easy. And in order to break through the tough times and through some of the depressing periods where you're facing incredible challenges, or where you have to be incredibly creative to actually solve those issues, that's nothing where the outlook of making a ton of money in the future is going to help you. Like, you have to be driven by being passionate. And, at the end of the day, I think you have to be crazy to a certain degree to actually be willing to go through the pain of actually building something that's changing the world.
I mean, everyone needs to eat, obviously, right? But there's also such a thing as an eating disorder. If you're a morbidly obese person, you can't hide behind everyone needs to eat. And that's how I think about money as well. Like, if you have enough, then a healthy person will be able to focus on other things. But for some people, money becomes like an eating disorder, where they can't get their consciousness off of the money. And because of that, their mind is not busy making inventions. They're just busy thinking how to make money, and no great inventions are made that way.
Nils, the answer is probably yes, but I'm not sure if you're willing to share this. But do you know what your IQ is?
I don't know. No.
Oh, you don't? I would be super interested in learning what your IQ is. I'm not just reiterating what everyone else is saying, but I've told this to you before a couple of times already. I think you're an absolute genius, and I think what you're doing with Auki is absolutely genius. And I keep my finger, I keep my fingers genuinely crossed for you to be successful. Not because we have invested a lot of money into Auki. That's really just the cherry on top. I really enjoy what you're doing. Every time I see a video of what you guys are building, I'm stunned by that, by seeing what's actually possible, and by being aware of how those experiences have been, how unenjoyable those AR experiences have been in the past, and by seeing what you guys are doing with the hand reconstruction, and by things being like touchable in the virtual space by your hand in reality. To me, that's just insane. And every time I see something like that, I'm very happy. And I'm not just happy because I see that you are actually building the thing with, for which we provided you money with, but I'm just generally happy to see that the world is getting shifted towards being a better place. And that might sound a little bit cheesy, because it might look like you're in quotes just building an AR solution or a positioning solution. But if you think about the scope of what you're building, I think you're truly making the world a better place, and you're making it like the example you gave us with people being stuck in traffic and the commuting, taking away so much man hours, which could be spent being productive or which could be spent with families and, just being more having a more enjoyable life. I think giving that back to the people is going to be a tremendous value add, which goes way beyond the sheer efficiency increase in the industry, for example. I think there's a big part of, I don't know the right word for this, but there's a big human part in what you're building, where humanity is going to be benefiting greatly. And to me, this is really like the ideal investment, where we have some financial incentive as an investor, where it's just enjoyable to make money. I think it's pretty difficult to deny that. But you also have the funding of something which is truly great for the world. And this makes it just, to me, the ideal investment. And, obviously all of this is a gamble. Just because you guys have listened into the AMA and you like Nils, that doesn't mean by any means that nothing can go wrong or that we don't all can lose our money. I think that's a pretty realistic probability that something which might even be out of the control of Nils goes wrong, and the investment goes wrong, and we are out of luck and all the money is gone. That I think that's something which still can happen. But to me, it's a bet which I was very willing to make, and I also feel comfortable that we have invested a total of 1 million plus already, just because I think it's a worthwhile bet to make. And I would much rather lose the 5K I have put in personally by betting on something that's actually groundbreaking and world changing. And I hope that you guys feel the same. And please, no one has to feel pressured of actually making an investment. All of this is completely optional, and you have to go with your own budget. And right now we have limited everyone to $250 per head, and we have limited the whales to $500. I know the majority of people have been screaming for bigger allocations. I will talk to Nils privately to see what we can do. But please always keep in mind this, this is not something which is a safe bet. This is something where we have a disproportionate amount of upside if the project succeeds, but we also have a great likelihood of something potentially going wrong. And Nils, please let me know if you disagree with my point of view here.
Yeah, don't buy our token. Buy dinner for your wife. I just want to. You're very kind to give me that compliment, but I really have to hand it to my team that the real geniuses are on the team. It's not me. I'm always the dummy in the room when talking to these guys. So if you think I'm smart, just wait until you get to speak to the lead engineer. So I'm just a happy spokesperson for these people that are working really hard to actually build these things. I just want to give credit to the fantastic minds of the engineering team.
Thank you. I mean, I can only imagine the guys, the kind of caliber and the kind of brain power you need to pull all these things off, and not just to pull them off, but you're pulling them off before everyone else. And being the first mover is not always as easy as just being first. You also have to explore new territory where no one has gone before. So it becomes increasingly more difficult to solve all those problems which you see in the R space.
I mean, we are very, very happy that you are supporting us in building this. Hopefully, I've managed to convey to you guys today that we're sincere about doing this and why you should care about the future privacy of the AR world. That being said, don't buy our token. Buy dinner for your wife. We don't. I don't want to describe us as an investment. Partially for legal reasons, which is something you should keep in mind for future AMAs. You should not put people on the spot and call this an investment. But
Nils, okay, so maybe to maybe also reassure you here. So we have a KYC process in place. So in order for people to participate, we make sure that there's no one from locations where investing in securities underlies things like being an accredited investor. And we also check for the accredited investor status for people who are out of the US who qualify for being that. and we have really strict guidelines here for screening who actually is capable of investing. So I understand your point, and I think we might want to make some improvements here regarding the AMAs, like legally speaking. But just to reassure you that we are very diligent in screening people, and everyone you see who's participating in the investment eventually, they all have KYC, and we all made sure that everything is 100% safe and sound.
I'm happy to hear that. Still, don't spend what you can't lose, or whatever it is the saying is. We're gonna,
no, 1,000%.
We're gonna do we're gonna do our best here, but there's definitely no guarantees. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. So yeah, just be mindful of that. I'm not here to shill our token. So happy to say, don't buy our token, buy dinner.
No, for sure. And, a big part of what we do is also the educational aspect. We have an academy built out in our server, which at the moment is focused on more of, helping people become more successful in life. But a part of this is also going back to being responsible with your money and not spending too much and not falling in love with a single thing and overspending, overextending yourself, and then putting yourself in a difficult position where if something goes wrong, you're losing your savings, or you cannot buy your wife dinner anymore. So we very well double down on that and make people be sure that they are they are looking at this as like lost money. The moment they make an investment, they're not looking at something which is going to be the end all be all, but it's really a gamble which you take.
You asked before, and I kind of dodged the question, what can the community do to help? And I think one of the things that the community can really do to help right now is to have conversations with each other and people you care about the implications of AR coming. We don't need help shilling our token, but we do need for the world to start talking about privacy and AR and how these things intersect in maybe unpleasant ways, so that we can, together as a society, not necessarily walk down that path. I already shared a blog post at auki.medium.com about the privacy concerns of the metaverse. I would be very happy if you read it, maybe left a like and a comment, and share it with people that care about how the metaverse is being built, because we need to think about these things together.
Nils, could you send me the link once again?
Absolutely, I'm sending it here in general chat. It's just Auki up. Tracy beat me. Thank you, Tracy. You're the best.
Yes. Yeah, I think Tracy is the biggest fan. She has been incredible. She facilitated the research report on Auki, and she has been really great in keeping us updated with the most recent developments with Auki and metaverse. I want to give her a shout out as well, because she has been extremely valuable. In keeping us up to date with everything that's going on.
In Matterless meetings, thinking, how will this new feature impress Tracy? We're very thankful for Tracy's support.
All right, Nils. It was amazing talking to you again, and I hope you DM me once you're in California. Then we can go out and have a coffee together.
Absolutely.
And brainstorm about the future of AR.
All right, guys, thank you for this amazing 2 hours. You are very generous with your time. Thank you for listening. Please help this conversation keep going.
Will do. Thank you, Nils, and talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.